right, well, welcome back again to Show Pig Central. I'm your host, Josh Brockman, along with my wife, Carrie, and we're glad you found us again, however you found us. And just on the front side, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple and you'd rather watch the podcast, jump over to YouTube and you can watch the video there, or you can just have the audio on Spotify or Apple or any of the other places you're finding it just on the audio. If you'd like the video, for now, the video is only on YouTube. So with that, welcome. We're glad you're back with us. We're glad to be back with you and back on another episode as we continue through this new journey and kind of figure out times and how it's going to work. And we're going to keep putting them out as often as we can. And so today, we're going to jump back in and talk about the production side of the show pig world, I guess you would say. And we're going to jump in. We loaded our first ones here recently in the Farrowing House, and I'm going to start farrowing tomorrow here in Montgomery for the summer of 2026. So we decided that would be good times fresh on our mind to go ahead and start and talk about the Farrowing House and everything that goes along with that. So again, welcome back. Glad to have you. Any words of wisdom before we jump in, honey?
No, there's a lot to cover today, so we better get right to it.
Perfect. So as we, if you listen to the some of the last podcasts, I think we've led up to certain points, but what we're going to do today, just to give you a little bit of an overline and an outline of how we're going to focus on today. We're going to start just a little bit before they go in the Farrowing House. We're going to start just as what we do for pre-farrow vaccines. How we kind of feed the sows through lactation, or not lactation, but gestation, and through their pregnancy there. When we load them in the crate, how we feed them then, take you through inducing, farrowing, how we manage the Farrowing House itself, which is going to be largely Carrie, and then we'll go through processing baby pigs, how that all functions, and then exiting the crate and pigs going into the nursery. And so we'll kind of take you through that timeline that works for us. Our way is not necessarily the right way. It's just the way that works for us. It's evolved and changed over the years. So you'll hear a little bit of differences as we go through as well. But to start with, we'll just start with the only pre-farrow vaccine we give is litter guard. And we give it one dose 2 to 5 weeks out. It's recommended different to give than that, and regardless if you've been giving pre-farrow vaccines or not, we try to work with our vets and do lean on them heavily. So I would definitely encourage you on the front side. Don't think just because it's what I do or what we do that's something you have to do, but that is a pre-farrow vaccine that I think is very generic, very good as far as helping manage kind of scours in the crates and that type of deal, and that's the one we give. We used to give 2 doses to the gilts or the sows that hadn't had that vaccine, and then just 1 dose to the sows. Things just get away from you now. We give 1 dose of litter guard somewhere 2 to 5 weeks before they farrow. So again, get with your vet, figure that out. There's lots of different vaccines depending on your need, but that's a general one that works really well for us. We talked about feeding on gilts when we had done the feeding deal at the time before, and on average we feed 4 to 5 pounds a day on our sows. We feed Linder 696, Linder 690, and then as far as gestation, 4 to 5 pounds per head. Here we're towards the end of May, depending on when this drops, and so it's starting to warm up in Montgomery, so we're constantly dropping our feed down. But the main time that we decrease feeds the last 45 days before we farrow. We want to bring those down to 4 pounds or 3 pounds, usually per head per day. We base that solely on condition. Some sows are naturally fleshier, some sows are naturally skinnier, so it's not a one-size-fits-all. But as a general rule, 3 to 4 pounds is plenty per head per day, those last 45 days before they farrow. That's going to help you manage pig size. It's going to help you manage body condition because, you're farrowing regardless. If you're farrowing in the Southwest, especially in the summer, or even in the Midwest, it's going to get warm at some point. So it helps those sows kind of manage that. I think they milk better when their condition's skinny down. And so, my goal is to have them, obviously not unhealthily thin, but it's the thinnest part of their life as they're going into the crate. I think they do the best with that. I think they manage farrowing the best with that. I think they milk the best that way, and so on. So 3 to 4 pounds is kind of the number we found that works. Again, it depends on where you're at, depends on what your feed is like, what feed you're feeding, so on and so forth. So that last 30 to 45 day window is very crucial. If you know anything about livestock, which I don't know a lot, but the smaller the pigs are, the easier they come out. And so the more that you feed them, the more those are going to grow, especially there towards the end. And compound problems. I would say most of the issues that we hear about with people that are having trouble farrowing is the number one cause is their sows are too fat.
A lot of times, yeah. I was going to say you can pretty much set yourself up for failure if you have, especially your gilts, too fat. And I'm not saying that hasn't happened to us in the past. Things just get away from you and you don't get feed dropped fast enough. But yeah, number one thing to try and have a successful trip through the Farrowing House is to make sure that they are not too fat. Josh mentioned the 3 to 4 pounds a day per head on feed. Lindner sow feed, there's 2 different ones that we rotate through. 690, 696 is medicated with CTC, so you'd have to have a VFD for that, but those are really good feeds. If you are feeding a cheaper, basically just a sow feed that doesn't have as much energy in it, you might have to bump that up just a tick. But on the Lindner sow side, the 690 and 696, that's where most of our...
No, that's one of the things I've noticed. Like if I'm feeding 96, I'm going to definitely feed less. A lot of the times when I get to this point in the year, I want to feed 90 because I can actually keep them thinner that way and still feed them a normal amount. Sometimes even on 96, I think it's high quality enough because it's made for a breeding feed, on the front side. It's hard for me sometimes to get them skinny enough on that feed versus bouncing down to just a generic 690 or something like that. So, yeah, we can talk about feeds, and again, we're going to tell you what we do because that's just what we know. It's not a one-size-fits-all, and different parts of the country, different parts of the state, different environments as far as how your facilities are set up, different feeds, all those things make tweaks, and you've got to kind of put your own to it and make it mesh. So, but as a general rule, that kind of is what works.
One other thing on that, we'll have sows every now and then that are either like boss sows in the pen. We have about, anywhere from 12 to 18 in a pen. And if you have one that's on one of the 2 extremes, kind of a boss sow that gets a lot more than she should, or one that gets real skinny because she's more timid, like Mai's mom, we would always have to pull her out and put her in her own pen towards the end of gestation because she was always kind of timid and basically could almost get too skinny going into the crate if we didn't do that. So just think about those things, watch that.
That was one of the best things facility-wise when we finally, there was a long time that if you ran around here, you knew. They just had to suck it up because they were what they were. That was the pens that we had, and if they were a little fat, then they were in a pen with a bunch of other ones. If they were a little skinny in the pen with and that was just how it went. And I didn't have the places to just isolate them out and kind of single feed them just a little bit, or double or whatever. When you run 100 in space, you just run 200, then you've got lots of those places. So, pulling those out, those skinnier sows that don't necessarily need more feed, but need to be, either put by themselves or with other kind of timid sows, and especially pulling those chunky ones, those boss sows, as Carrie said, that eat a bunch, pulling them out to where you can manage their feed amount. The last month and a half can make a large difference. And like I say, not only on pig size and getting the pigs out, but I think the way they milk, the way they produce and work for you in the crate, I think all of those things, body condition matters immensely. So if always kind of go by the general rule, if you want to hop your sows out and show them to somebody as they're going into the crate, they're probably too fat. So take that for what it's worth. Some sows are just fleshy. Other ones you can kind of thin down the way you need to. So as we load them in the crate, there's differences in opinion on this. The one thing I would tell you is I would not load them the day before they're due. I would not load the day that they are due. We'd probably try to tend to that 3 to 7 day window before their due date to get them loaded. you get in the heat of the battle in the summer sometimes. I'm sure many of you listening have this, where you got to get them in there when you can because you've got other ones in there in front of them. So we deal with plenty of that. We've built crates and loaded stuff there and there and farrowed them and moved them out and around and upside down and everything else to try to get them over the years. But 3 to 7 days, if you can get them in the crate that early before they're due, I think that does a few things for you. I think one, if they farrow a little early, you're loaded. Two, if it gives them a few days, especially if they're gilts, to kind of get settled in and used to something they've never been a part of or environment in. And three, it helps you regulate again the exact feed amount head by head. So again, those sows that eat a little more, eat a little less if they're in general population, you can sure enough manage that there as it's getting crucial those last few days before due day. So now that's talking about farrowing houses and farrowing crates. That's how we have everything. There's people that pen farrow and do all kinds of other stuff. And I think there's lots of useful ways of that. Just haven't done it, so can't speak to it very much on our end. So this is just kind of how we at least currently work from there. Most often, sows come out of general population for us, loaded into the farrowing house, into a crate. We've got 2 double L's that are, 54 crates or whatever it is. And that's where they are until they wean. So
one thing on that, and my pet peeve is we always will Dectomax the sows when we move them in. That's going to help you a bunch later on that litter, not dealing with mange and stuff. But I really get irritated if we forget and they don't get that shot of Dectomax until they get in the crate. I do not like giving that shot in the crate when you first put them in there. So what we like to do is wash them before we move them in, and while we're washing, give them that shot of Dectomax before we move them in. To me, the worst thing you can do with a gilt that's not real smart anyway is put her in a crate and then give her a shot and then think that she's going to act good for you in 3 days when it's time to farrow.
She's going to act fine.
You know a lot about it.
I hear that a lot this summer. But, another thing that Carrie said that's, is somewhat, maybe basic, but is getting those sows clean, washed, especially if you're coming out of dirt pens. Our main sow burns dirt, or the majority of it's dirt. And so this first group that we loaded all came out of that barn. It's my favorite sow barn that we have. And so it takes a little time to get those sows clean, washed, all the mud, debris, so on and so forth off of them. And you're probably not going to get it all, but get it, do as good a job as you can, because again, the less that you can track into that farrowing house, the better it's going to be. Just like a hospital, and so on and so forth. So I guess before we talk any further about that, we could back up just a hair of how we prep the farrowing houses. So we pressure wash, and we try to keep them. We try to wash things as immediately as they're emptied out and clean. So like we'll farrow all through the summer, and then at the end we'll try to get them clean as quick as we can. So they're not just sitting there dirty and nasty for an extended period of time with things grow and so on and so forth. Doesn't always work out as quick as we'd like for it to, but that's just part of it. So the last group we farrowed was in January, prior to these Mays that are going in now. That farrowing house has been set and clean for a while. We've actually we'll soak everything and soap everything and let it kind of break down and then wash through. And then we started differently this time, disinfecting twice. So we'll go through once with Synergize, and then we followed that up this time after we washed that, let it set again. Then we followed up with Rescue as a second disinfectant. Never used it before. It's the first time through. Smells good. I liked it. We'll see how it all shakes out. But I think that's important. And another thing, especially if you're running a bunch of them and you're going to go through that farrowing house, through a crate, use a crate 2 or 3 times through a season, and getting them clean on the front side's very, very important. And, pressure washing with an oscillating tip versus a straight pressure. If you've got the ability to pressure wash with hot water, we've fought hot pressure washers around here. Our well water and the valves on them don't agree with one another very well. Another podcast for another day on malfunctioning equipment, but getting that place is clean. I'll never forget the first time that I even learned. Troy Sloan told me about this oscillating pressure washing tip that spins the water. That I don't know what it was originally designed for, but when we put that on and went through everything the first time, it was like, man, I did not realize how not clean we were getting things. That was also the first time we used hot water, but those things make a large difference. They wear out quick around here because we treat them kind of rough, but well worth investing in and oscillating pressure washing tip. So everything's clean. Sows are loaded. Like Carrie said, we Dectomax them as we put them in the crate. You could use Ivomec, I guess. Dectomax is just the wormer that we use. That helps a lot, not only on your sow mange and all that, but on your babies and all the way through. I don't know if the babies are necessarily getting anything out of it, getting that shot right then. We Dectomax the babies too at weaning, but it has helped us quite a bit on general herd health of being sure. It's an easy way to be sure they get Dectomax, that it's a safe time to do it, that they get wormed, internal and external parasites alike.
I don't know. I feel like I can tell a big difference if we don't worm the sow, but it might just be in my head. So
it's a possibility.
I was going to say, and then 3 days out from farrowing, we'll start supplementing with 2 different products. We'll use the Transrite product. I really, really like that as far as decreasing the time of that farrowing interval. I can always tell when that's gotten skipped. And it seems like also mainly more on gilts than sows even. But I feel like that farrowing window is shortened. I feel like they push better. I feel like they milk better afterwards if they've been on that at least 3 days prior to farrowing. So we'll start with Transrite, and then we'll also put probably, I think that's a 2-ounce scoop of Epsom salt in their feed 3 days.
When I feed, I just throw a handful in there.
That's shocking. I usually use the scoop. So anyway.
Either way, handful or 1 or 2 ounces.
We do that to help them not be as constipated after they farrow. Sows tend to get constipated after the farrowing process. I don't know how deep we're going to go into farrowing, but, after we farrow, we give them
about 100 over the next.
You know what I mean. After we farrow, we'll give them a pretty big antibiotic shot to help, fight anything that may have got introduced during farrowing, especially if we had to help them. And so those antibiotics compound the issue of them sometimes getting constipated. So if we haven't had really very many problems at all once we started the Epsom salt thing.
No, that works really good, and I'm sure there's again lots of products that'll work for that, but that one you can get at Walmart or Dollar General, and it's easy and it's cheap, and about a handful works, and sows eat it fine. I'm sure it doesn't taste very good, but they don't seem to care.
And we will continue the Epsom salt like probably 2 days post farrow, just kind of depending on how fast they go to the bathroom.
Yeah,
and that's gonna, in my opinion, how fast they go to the bathroom after they farrow. How fast or slow you increase feed post farrow, and how much Dex you had to give them during farrowing. Those 3 things are really going to affect their milk supply and how they start milking from the get-go. But it seems like getting them to go to the bathroom as fast as you can helps them start milking immediately.
Right. No doubt. And if you didn't catch those, that Showrite, Transrite, Sal Ultra, we'll B-roll those up on the screen as we go through here.
Oh, what?
B-roll.
You're so techie.
Yeah, I'm learning.
B-roll.
I'm learning. So those will should be on the screen right there when y'all get this. They're not there right now, but they will be when y'all get this. So so we're in the crate. We're Dectomax. We're feeding along. Transrite and Epsom salt for all the things that Carrie said. I am the Transrite thing makes 0 sense to me how it works, but it is we won't farrow sow without it. So very, very useful for us. That last once I get them in the crate, when we're talking about that, the sows on the farm get fed at 7:30 every morning. That doesn't change when they go into the Farrowing House. We used to feed twice a day, and really don't know why. One of those sets and seasons, I said, why don't we try feeding them just in the morning? And
I think somebody told us that.
One of the smartest things
It has been somewhat life-changing in the summer because when we feed, someone will be in that Farrowing House until all those sows lay down. And so you're usually in there anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half waiting on the sows to eat and all lay down. And so we were having to do that twice a day. And in the evenings here, they would get so hot that they really didn't want to get up and eat, but they would get up and eat, and then they would get even hotter, and then you're still waiting an hour and a half for them to lay down. So yeah, that was life-changing for us in the summer to only feed once a day. And I actually think that we haven't had any more pigs laid on. I mean, feeding once a day.
No, I would say less. Like, and it's like, you think of the simplicity of it. For us, feeding in the morning works a lot better. I understand some people that don't have a ton of sows that may be listening to this. So I can't feed in the morning. I have to feed in the evening, and I get it. Like, that's, you got to do what you got to do. If you can, I would prefer feeding in the morning, especially in the summertime, just because of the heat and the weather. Because it takes so long, whether you've got a wide open Farrowing house or one that's like our double L's that are closed and more controlled temperature wise, or as controlled as we can get it. Takes so long for those Farrowing houses to cool down in the evening and those sows to cool down and going through the day. In the morning just seems to work significantly better. And what I learned is not only does it make our life a lot easier, because like Harry said, you're not getting those sows up a whole extra time through the day to eat and then hanging around and making sure they don't smash something. And it's the hottest part of the day, and for you or whoever, it's the end of the day. It's you've had it, whether you full time at this or part time at this. Like, at the end of the day, it's the end of the day, ready to kind of start winding down. So it helps that. And what I thought a lot was those sows are so much more comfortable. And there's been times, whether another sow farrowing or just kind of rolling through, 9, 10 o'clock at night, those sows will get back up and eat then. But by that point, it's the cool of the night. Babies are usually laid up. Sows are comfortable. They get up, take their time, eat and drink, and they aren't hot, frustrated, wanting to lay down because they're hot and tired. Babies wanting to eat, all that. Everything just seems to kind of be at their pace versus your pace of wanting them to. So that has worked really, really, really well, feeding them once a day.
Why don't you go over how we increase feed post-farrow?
So when we put them in the crate, that's where we were just going. They get fed 2 pounds a day. So even if I'm feeding them 3 or 4 out in general population, as I load them in the crate, I'm going to feed them 2 pounds once a day for that 3 to however many days they're in there before they farrow. And then we're going to let them farrow, and we're going to bump them to 3 or 4 pounds immediately, as they're farrowing, the way our drops are. Carrie or Rachel, one of that sow's farrowing, they're just going to ease up there and pull that tab down to set it at 3 or 4 pounds. Just depending
for the next feeding.
Feeding. So that might be on Monday morning when a sow's farrowing, that they're resetting it for Tuesday morning. It might be Monday night, might be Monday, however it is. But the next feeding, they're going to get an additional pound or 2. So roughly 12 to 24 hours after they farrow, they're going to get a double in feed intake from 2 pounds to 4 pounds. Then we're going to from there work up the next day to 6 to 8 pounds. The next day or 2, because I think, like Carrie said, on sows getting cleaned out, it's very, very important. You kind of ease feed and hold feed back so they can get everything through on farrowing, get their system back going digestively to where go to the bathroom, bowel movements, that things are normal, not plugged up, and they're going to be hungry. But holding them that extra, and DJ Sanders was the first person that actually put that kind of into my mind at Louisville a couple of summers ago, just withholding that back for an extra 24-ish, 36 hours. And then we kind of work up. And from that point, we continue working up 10 pounds, 12 pounds, 14, whatever. We basically self-feed them from that point. They get fed every morning, but we try to make it to – we're going to feed them as much as they can that we know by the next morning that feeder will be cleaned up.
But they do have feed kind of throughout the day.
Yeah, so it's, and, if they eat it right then we go ahead over a day or 2 and bump it up and work it up. And I would say generally most of those sows are 12 to 15 pounds a day. Some more than that, some less than that. You just kind of got to feel it out. But doing it that way, I think, has made or lactation part better. The sows milk a lot better. The babies do better. And again, they're kind of on their own schedule as far as if, if they don't get up and eat when we feed in the morning, normally we'll go ahead and get them up, but not always.
For sure.
In certain situations we might not, but as a general rule we do. And like Carrie said, when those sows are up, especially when those babies are 3 days or younger, there's somebody in there till they get laid down. Make sure nothing gets smashed. So.
One thing on that, every now and then we'll have sows that are just so hungry after they farrow that they will not lay down and let them nurse. And so I will go ahead and feed those sows about 3 pounds then. And typically those that are just, super, super hungry, once you feed them that, then they'll lay down and let them nurse. So if you notice that, like, hey, my sow is just standing up, looking around, she's done farrowing, I don't know what's going on, feed her. And a lot of times she'll lay down. Even if it's at night, I'll go ahead and feed her so she'll lay down. Now, if they're up and down and kind of acting weird and all that, they probably still have a pig in them, would be my guess. But yeah, from a feeding standpoint, every now and then I'll have one that's so hungry that I have to go ahead and feed her right after she farrowed so she'll lay down.
Yes, very cautiously and carefully and quietly.
Yeah, so we don't get the whole farrowing house riled up. Yeah, for sure. How much do you want to talk about farrowing in itself? Is that a whole nother?
No, we could talk about it.
Well, talk about, you do your inducing thing, and then we'll talk about that.
So yeah, so the ways of the world where we are, we induce everything.
I think that's a personal decision too.
Yeah, we've went through every facet of this possible. We've went from inducing them all to only inducing the gilts, to only inducing when we had to only inducing when they don't start by their due date, not inducing hardly anything, and everything in between, I guess. So when it comes to inducing, we have covered the bases.
Yeah. No, and I think it depends on the kind of person that you are. If you don't require a lot of sleep, or if you don't sit up with your sows, then maybe you don't have to induce. I require a lot of sleep. And so I want to induce because I want to know when they're going to farrow. Brennan told us his inducing schedule, and it helped us tremendously getting that timing right. And so once we got the timing right, it has made life so much easier. I know we had some friends that said that they didn't induce and how good it went, and we tried that, and that was the worst week of my life. 2 Januaries ago, it was terrible. It was like farrowing 24 hours a day. I think we had 30 head due, and for 3 days, it was just nothing but that. It was awful.
Well, and that was that was another one of those. If you haven't listened to Smart Breeding Starts Here, you can go back. We matrix everything also, for a lot of the same reason of just convenience and being able to make it work. And it's kind of like same thing with this. If for us, we induced the first set this morning, and hopefully by noon tomorrow they've all at least began to farrow, so we can, with that everybody's fresher. Carrie's kind of knows what to come. Like at 4 or 5 in the morning, we're gonna go check the farrowing house and see where things are at. One of us is. I'm sure I know who that'll be, but and then we're kind of planned on where we're at versus being stretched out over 3 or 4 days for the same set, and that standpoint. There'll be other people that'll tell you, and rightfully so, that without inducing they have a lot less issues and things are more natural and on all that, and we've seen that too. We've seen the positives and the negatives probably of both sides. But if you're on a schedule and you're on a timeline, and you want to just make it more convenient, then that's what we do. We induce them all. We use estromate as a general rule, 2 to 3 cc's depending on sow size and that.
And the little bottles.
And that's the other thing I was going to say. So we went back and we'll farrow 100 of them this summer. So, I mean, there'll be some people that farrow more than us, but we don't have, it's going to be a long run. But I order estromate now in 20 ml bottles versus the 100 ml bottles. And just because I would get to the last third of those other bottles, and especially if you if you break into one, for this group, and then your next group's 3 weeks down the road, and then your next group's 3 weeks from there, which a lot of guys set their stuff up that way, which makes sense. Then, but if you're still working off that same bottle in a month or a month and a half, I don't think it's efficiency and efficacy. Struggle with English. I don't think it's as good. So I ordered the 20 ml bottles. Can do 9 or 10, 8 to 10 when we do that. And that way everything just stays fresh. And I know if I get to the end of a bottle in the last of the season, I'm just going to throw it away because I'm not going to use it for the next group in the next season. The ones I've got a partial bottle that we didn't finish today. Here in a couple of weeks on the next group, I'll use it again. But I'm not stretching it past that when I got into that smaller vial. So I like that. I would recommend doing that. So that's Estramate. Estraplan is the generic that we're using right now. Works good. And then also on gilts, at the same time I'm giving that, I'll give 4 cc's of dexamethasone. I think that helps soften their cervix just a little bit. Kind of gets them on into induction pretty good. I like that too. We just started adding that. Got that from some cattle folks. Thought that was a good ad. I think cattle, maybe not.
Well, it was Bridget Crone at TDPA. She's cattle folk now. Yeah. And he tries to hit them at 9:30 in the morning. That was probably our biggest struggle, is getting the timing right, I would say.
Yeah. And that's another thing. Like it's so generally, by 9 a.m. I've hit them. Some of them might fair at 5 in the morning. Some of them might start
at
5
fares at 5 in the morning?
The sows do.
Yeah, it's
and,
not you.
So there's still some, but as a general rule, 24 hours later, they're rolling. 24 to 30 hours later, they're
especially
rolling.
From a sow standpoint. Those gilts will drag a little bit.
So again, it's not a one size fits all, but that's where we are. I, as far as an ideal for me, is to farrow them on their due date. As a general rule. So I'm figuring off the first dose of semen that I put in 114 days from there, and I'm hitting them on day 113 with Estramate, so they would farrow on day 114 as of the first dose of semen that they were bred with. We'll the set that I hit this morning, some are due on today's Wednesday, some are due Thursday, some are due Friday. And I pulled them all, induced them all. So some of them will actually farrow on day 113, hit on 112. I think you can even, in some cases, pull them up a day earlier than that, hit them on 111 to farrow on 112. I wouldn't pull them much earlier than that, or we don't. Not real comfortable with that. And sometimes there's advantages to pulling them up early if they're gilts that look a little light, or even sows that look a little light, farrow them a little bit earlier, because if their litter size is a little smaller, obviously the pigs are naturally going to be a little bigger. And the opposite of that, if they look really, really heavy, we've had some that we've grouped that way, and we induced them early just to group things together. And pigs were a little small. Everything usually works out fine, just a little tougher start on those 12, 13, 14 size litters. So there's a little give and take there, but as a general rule, farrowing on day 114, I think is the most ideal for us if we can do that.
Who was it? 2 seasons ago, we had a boar that had tiny pigs, and it was like you could not induce. Who was that?
Yeah.
We learned after the first set that you could not induce his. I mean, they had to farrow on their due date, or even, hit them on their due date to farrow the next day. I can't remember now who it was.
I remember it happening, but I don't remember what boar it was.
Yeah, maybe it'll come to me later.
Yeah, there's some of that definitely, again, if there's a one size fits all in this deal, then I haven't found it.
And this is all for crossbreds. I think birds
other than a
or
shovel.
something.
There's plenty of shovels that are one size fits all, but it was a.
If it was a Burke, you would have to do something different, I think.
Yeah, Burks. I don't have Burke. I have a Burke, but anyways, that's a different conversation. She's farrowed just fine. Hadn't had a Burke yet, but anyhow, so that's the other thing to keep in mind. Again, if you've got any further questions on that, reach out to us. We're happy to try to answer anything further, but that gives you a general idea and fairly specific of that. So
we do have heat lamps up, and we use towels when they farrow. to get those pigs dried off with. So like last night, which was a Tuesday, and the first sales ready Thursday, we went ahead and turned all the heat lamps on and put towels down for everything that could potentially go early. Every now and then we'll have one go 2 days early. And so we went ahead and had all that kind of ready to go just in case somebody went early. So like Josh said, in the morning, one of us will check the Farrowing House at 5 or 6 o'clock probably. You know, typically sows will go a little bit earlier than gilts, and the ones that are heavier bred looking will typically go earlier. I would hope when we induced 12 this morning, so I hope when I go in the morning, you know, the majority of them have discharge by 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. And they're going to start out with a clear discharge and then go to like a yellow, and then the closer they get to a bloody discharge. We'll go through this evening and check milk and all that just to kind of see if it looks like anybody might go tonight, because that's always a possibility. But, you know, we hope by 6 o'clock in the morning they've got squirting milk and some at least clear discharge. I like sows to start having pigs within 2 to probably 4 hours of having discharge. If you go over 4 hours, I start getting a little nervous. I'm kind of a nervous person, so it doesn't always mean that something's not right if she's having discharge and nothing's, you know, is progressing. But if they will start, you know, discharging and then have a pig within 4 hours, 2 to 4, I feel really good about that. Typically, when I see bloody discharge, you know, I'll watch them while they have clear to yellow to bloody. But as soon as they start having bloody discharge, I'll kind of sit there with them to see if they're pushing or not. I think a lot of times you're going to get yourself in a bind if you're in and out of the Farrowing House, and I understand, you know, we're blessed that we have a lot of help this summer, so it might not be possible for you. But if you are just in and out checking on her, not real, you know, kind of infrequently, you're going to miss maybe like if she's straining real hard. If, you know, every now and then you'll have one that can get one back leg out, but the other one's tucked underneath. And if you're not in there and seeing when that happens, then you don't know that, you know, is the case. So once they have bloody discharge, we try to hang in there with them. And, you know, I will not check a sow unless she is just, before she has her first pig, unless if she's like rolling up on her, like pushing extremely hard and rolling up on her side a bunch. That, to me, in my experience, it seems that always means like one is coming breached with its back legs up underneath itself. Here the last few years, I've seen some where like their head is coming like this more than having their nose flipped up to come out right. So, you know, every now and then you can see that. If she is really pushing hard and rolling up a bunch, and I can just tell like, man, she should have a pig as hard as she's pushing, like to the point of where she's almost kind of wanting to, you know, have a rectal prolapse, then I'll check with my fingers and just see if I can feel a tail or feel a forehead or kind of, you know, see what's going on. I do not personally use OB gloves. I don't feel like I can, you know, just feel as much that way. I use a medical scrub soap to you know, clean my hands and disinfect them, and I use that as a lube. There might be some vets that just freaks them out, but that's what I've done for, I don't know, however long we've been doing this. And so that's kind of how I do it. Make sure my nails are clipped short. But use a medical scrub like they have you know, take a shower with before you have a surgery. And that's what I use to clean my hands and to use as a lube as well. So like I said, if I think she's having problems, I'll kind of check with my fingers. Every now and then I do have to help, and it's always a guilt, of course, get the first pig out. And so I'll just tell you this. If
not
you're
often.
Huh?
Not
Not real often. No. Sometimes one of the worst things we can do is get too impatient and try to, you know, force something that's just, it's not ready to happen yet. If you are a male and you have large hands, I personally think you should never, ever, ever, ever check a sow with your hand.
That would be me.
Yeah. Basically, if you're going to farrow sows, you successfully, or gilts, you really need to have somebody that has pretty small hands to help you, or you're going to cause yourself so much more problems. My parents used to raise pigs, and I'll never forget, Billy got his big old hand up and he was like, I want you to show me how I'm supposed to do this. And he had this, his big hand. And I'm like, Billy, if your hand could get through her pelvis, there is any pig in America that could get through her pelvis. So, it's just not everybody can pull pigs. And hopefully everybody's are just maternal and great and gigantic inside and their pigs are tiny and you don't have to worry about it. And if you're one of those people, I'm very happy for you.
Right. And again, we all deal with what we deal with, and it's just part of it. I mean, we're not at PIC having F1s that are, laying on their side and having 20 a litter. But back to the same, I think what helps us a lot is, I made the reference to that one sow barn being my favorite sow barn. My settle rate and conception rate and litter size out of that barn is better than my other 3 sow barns. Why, I don't know, but it's gotten to where it was significant enough that I rotate them through that barn to breed. Your timing on the front side, again, smart breeding starts here. If you hadn't listened to that episode, it matters a lot. And then I'll just say it again, body condition on the back side. And it matters a bunch. So having those sows thin, keeping the baby smaller, to where even when you have those instances of a gilt that it was, bad weather situation or whatever, when you were breeding and she has a short litter of 3 or 4, you manage condition, you manage pig size the best you can, and it usually can, you can come out of that in a success. You skip one of those steps and she's too fat or whatever, and it's going to be,
it's a train wreck.
It's going to be a disaster. So,
we can't go through every farrowing scenario here. That's something, if you have something in particular, text me or email us or something. We'll try to answer that to you. But I do not give oxytocin until they've had at least, what I think is about 3/4 of their litter. So no more than, typically after the 6th pig is when I'll give oxy. I had a vet tell me one time, and he's a very nice person and a good vet, more probably dog and cat vet, but told me, yeah, just go ahead and give oxy. It's fine. It's not going to hurt anything even after the 1st pig. And then I remember Tatum Swinhagen was doing some research, and she said, well, I read where it's going to make some of them, detach their cords quicker if you give it too quick. And I definitely think that's the case. So, if you're a vet and you're listening to this and this is like hurting your ears because you don't, it doesn't align with textbook, I get it. I'm just telling you what, the experience we've had of 15 to, I don't know, possibly 20 years of doing it and kind of what we've seen. So I give 3/4 of a cc of oxy after I think they're about 3/4 of the way done. One of the biggest things I've thought for a long time is, how do I know that they are done? Like it pains me when a pig gets left in one. And I'll be the first to admit that the first time you check a sow and stick your arm in her, she's going to not push as good from there on out. Sow, gilt, whatever. But some of these we have to help. So, if you don't have to, they're going to clean out easier on their own and finish on their own if you don't have to check them. But irregardless, even if I have a sow farrow in the middle of the night and she has 12, nursing on her when I get in there, I'm almost always going to check her to be sure there's not a 13th one in there, just to be sure. I like them to end on even numbers. I don't know if there's any scientific thing to that or not. I know last year when we started, we had a lot of 7s and 11s, and it was kind of freaking me out because I felt like we needed to end on an even number. But I've bought the sonogram machine to try to check them to be sure that they're done. All the things that didn't really work. So anyway, when I think they're done, I'll give them oxy, that 3/4 of a cc. Or I guess when they're 3/4 of the way done, I'll give them oxy if they need it. If they don't need it, then I'll wait till they're almost done, give them oxy, check them, see if I feel anything. I wait 15 minutes after I give that oxy to check them. So if they don't have anything, I'll go ahead and give them their big antibiotic shot. We give Baytril, XNL, and for sure Banamine. Every now and then I'll still give them Dex. I think you can give them, if they had to have Dex during farrowing because they were swelling, then I won't give it in their shot at the end because I don't want it to affect their milk production too much. So like I said, we do Baytril. We do Exenel instead of Exceed because Exceed, Hal Hendrickson explained it to me. It doesn't, spike as much in their system because it stays in it longer. And Exenel is going to spike, and do you more good right then and then kind of fall off. So that's why we use Exenel. I've been real happy with that since we made that switch a few years ago. And then we'll give, some Banamine and possibly Dex. Right. I like to give it as soon as you can after they're done farrowing. Now, if it's a gilt and I have fought her to stay laying down and she's been dumb and she hasn't wanted to lay down and nurse her pigs, if she is nursing her pigs and unless she has had a ton of trouble, I'm going to wait until the next morning when she gets up to eat to give her that shot. I don't like to wait that long. All of this, there's no textbook of how to do it. So you've got to, just kind of assess the scenario that you're in and figure out what's best. But if I have fought her, then I'm going to wait. There is a product that Amara Sanders, I learned this from her, that Calphos product. If you have a gilt that's acting really dumb, not wanting to lay down, wanting to, maybe snap at her pigs or try to eat them. I've had some sows that were kind of stupid and we've used it on, and it is done.
Well, and some of that comes somewhat with the inducing thing.
No, the inducing thing makes them a little madder, for sure. But that Calphos product has been incredible to get them to calm down. I've had some that I've lasered to get them to calm down. I think that's worked too. So, you just kind of got to go with, you got to adjust to every scenario differently.
No, I think that's the biggest thing. If you're listening to this and you're getting to this point, it's like, man, they do things a lot different than I do. And that if you've heard anything consistently, it's we used to do this, now we do this. We used to do this, now we do. It's a constant just feeling out and what works in your facility and your setup on your timeline, and that changes just like it's changed for us. So hopefully there's at least one or two things you can grab from this to make it, maybe to add in, or maybe you've sitting there learning and said, man, this is why we've been having so many issues, and you need to change most everything, and everything in between. So that's the main reason for us wanting to do it. Hopefully it's helpful. It's a lot of the trial and error that we've kind of experienced over the last however long. So
one thing I forgot to say on the farrowing part, and this is kind of my wheelhouse, so I could talk about it all day, but timing between your pigs. At the front end of that litter, I'm good with going 30 minutes between each pig. And I remember asking Gleason, am I messing up by checking her religiously every 30 minutes if she hasn't had a pig? And he was like, for what these things are worth now and your arm's little? No, get after it. That's a personal decision too. Some people might think that's really stupid, but if I have a stillborn and I think if I would have just checked her, it costs you, who knows? Yeah. Now, when she gets closer to looking flatter, and when I think she might be done, so signs that they are getting close to done, she starts calling the pigs. She looks pretty flat. I used to try to gauge afterbirth, like how much they've kind of had, if that relates to how many pigs she's had. And now that we have these double L crates with these pits, some of it will fall through, and so it's kind of hard to tell. But those are signs, if she's getting comfortable calling them, sides looking flat, all those things, then she's looking like she's close to done. I will go every 20 minutes at the end between pigs just to kind of, make sure that one hadn't been in there too long.
Yeah, if you've got any questions, I know that's a lot of information and a lot of scenarios and a lot of that. Shoot us a text or email, showpigcentral@gmail.com. Our cell phones are plenty easily accessible, but
are you going to talk about processing or no?
Yeah. So again, that next thing, pigs are born. We've talked about farrowing them. We've talked about feeding the sows. Babies are there. Just a few things that we do from that standpoint is within 24 hours, they get their first dose of iron, ampicillin, and Draxxin. We order that mixed from
Stony Creek.
Already. It works really well. It's mixed up. You don't have to do your own mixing and drawing and that, and give them a cc and a half, cc and a quarter, whatever it says on the bottle. And so they get that within 24 hours. We spray all 4 feet in their navel with iodine wound spray, and I think that helps just kind of get things dried up, cleaned up. Kind of helps get them off to the right start. And for the first week of their life after that, they don't get anything. We give them that and let them roll, let them nurse, let them do that. From that standpoint, they actually get 2 doses of that iron, ampicillin, and Draxxin. The next one either a week later or after we give our paracel vaccine. I'm not going to get too much into which vaccines to use and not to use because it's so herd specific, and you really need to work with your vet on what you can do.
What you're fighting.
Yeah. So there's a lot of generic, not generic, but widespread commercial vaccines that can get you all the way through. And then if you're fighting different scenarios, you can add different ones. But so they'll get 2 rounds of that iron, ampicillin, and Draxxin, one within 24 hours, the other one a week or somewhere between 7 and 14 days old. And then that's pretty much it. We ear notch when they get that second dose of that. So between 7 and 14 days old, that's just kind of our sweet spot to ear notch. It's kind of what's worked for us, and I've ear notched at 2 or 3 days old. I've ear notched right before we wean, and so anywhere in between there. But that's just kind of what works for us. Just depends. We do that because that's the next time we're handling them. We don't have to handle them an additional time just to ear notch them. I think that works pretty good. The next thing that they would, we creep feed for the last week that they're on the sow, and creep feeders, and then they get their vaccines, their weaning vaccines, 3 to 4 days before we wean. I really like doing that. I think it helps. We actually vaccinate the pigs and the sows all at the same time, 3 to 4 days before we're going to wean. It lets the sows lay in the crate and get over it. It lets the pigs lay on their mama still and get over it, and then go into the nursery quite a bit healthier. So as far as the pigs and that standpoint, it's fairly simple of what we do. Sometimes you'll get navels that stay a little moist and don't get dried up right. We'll keep spraying them with iodine. Sometimes you'll get different stuff that you got to deal with, but as a general rule, that's kind of the protocol that we cover. I dock their tails as we wean them, because I'm the only one that I'll let anybody around here dock their tails, and I know I'm going to be there on weaning day most of the time, so that kind of just works good. As we wean pigs, they get Baytril, Dectomax, and they get their tails docked. So they get a cc of Baytril, they get 1/10 of a cc of Dectomax, and I cut their tails, and we take them to the nursery. So, sorry, fighting a little bit of I don't know what here in the up and down weather scenario, but pretty simple on the pig side of things. If you got any questions past that, as far as what vaccines we use or anything like that, you'd be happy to shoot us an email or text. I'd be happy to tell you. But you'd be better served just getting with your vet that you work with, or if you don't have one, find one, and not one that maybe is just local, but one that knows what's going on, that right deals with this. I've got 3 vets that I use. One lives an hour from here, one lives 8 hours, and one lives 14 hours. So, find the ones that can help you, I guess is what I'm saying. So, with that,
there's a couple things that we didn't.
Go ahead.
So when we start feeding the sows in the Farrowing House, where you switch to 691, it's a lactation feed that has BMD in it, and so it's going to help with those, try to prevent those milk scours. So I've had that question several times this week. What we use as a lactation feed, 691. Every now and then you're going to have a sow that gets in there and doesn't want to eat after she farrows, and so we don't have a ton of that, but every now and then we'll fight one. We'll start giving them Vet Zone Ulcer. We'll switch them to 685 or even 611 sometimes, just to kind of get them going, and then you can put them, kind of gradually work them back on to 691. If you have a sow that is fighting, just not milking very good, maybe she farrowed hard, maybe she doesn't like the heat, whatever it is, they do seem to milk better on 611, or kind of more of a show feed type, higher energy type diet. I know that sounds expensive, but you know, it's better than losing a pig. I think as soon as you start, you know, babies can go downhill so quick. Like if I start seeing any kind of little ridges on their back, like, I mean, the most minute little ripples on their back, I want to start milking because that you can literally lose one in 12 hours. We try to maximize every single pig that comes through. And so, you know, we might have a litter of 12 and 10 of them are doing fine. But if we have two skinnies, we're going to milk that litter to try to save those two skinnies. Last year we had two Michon sows. One of them was in our early group, and so she helped us raise
No, that's
a
the other
bunch
thing I
of
was going
them.
to say, and we didn't talk about this going through. Just coming to mind when you said that. You know, if we've, you know, tomorrow we're going to farrow 16, I think.
12.
12, yeah, and another 4 the next day. Anyway, this group, so tomorrow we'll farrow 12. They will hopefully be litters of 12 to 14, and there will probably be a litter of, you know, 5 to 6. And so we move and shuffle and shake and all kinds of stuff, you know, on those heavier litters and spreading them out. I think that's a, you know, a very positive thing to do if you have the ability. And so we do plenty of that too. Like Carrie said, we'll add milk replacer on the ones that need it.
After 24 hours.
Yeah, not before that because you don't want to mess up your colostrum intake. But moving things around, and even if you're, you know, 3 or 4 days down the road, and you notice there's 2 or 3 in one of those bigger litters that aren't doing as good, if you've got a sow that had just farrowed, that's still, because after a certain point, those sows they're gonna figure out what they've got and they're gonna produce milk for that, you know, that group and where they're at and where they're nursing. And shut everything else off. So you got to be careful moving stuff later. But if you've got places to move them, if they're hungry enough, they're going to move and take a hold. Very seldom are they skinny and they won't grab a hold of another sow. So
Unless it's too late, basically.
yeah. So utilize that. Some of them will fight you a little bit and they won't nurse another one and they just rather be skinny on their mama. So, you know, kind of just trial and error as you go and paying attention. But there's lots of little things like that you'll come across. But hopefully, this has been helpful as a general principle to take and maybe start some questions and thoughts. It was just kind of all fresh on our mind as we get started here in 2026 on the first group of the summer. So what?
We use, what's the drying agent that we use now? Secazorb.
Yep.
So while they're farrowing, like we'll
I'll
deliver.
put it on the B-roll.
Okay, B-roll, whatever that means.
On the screen.
We will, once the pig's farrowed,
I think
we'll
it's on the
wipe.
B-roll.
Would you hush? We'll wipe their mouth off, and then we put that drying agent on them. Even when it's 100 here, the babies will still be cold if you don't get them dry fast enough. And little babies can use energy so fast. So we put that drying agent on them. It also kind of helps dry their cord up. If you go to process the next day in 24 hours and you have a wet navel, he's probably not going to live. He didn't get enough colostrum. But this drying agent does help with getting them dried off. And then the other thing we didn't mention is we said we started creep feeding a week out, but we didn't say it. We use 600 to creep feed. We didn't mention that. So.
Yeah, and I've played with that because you know your pre-starter feeds are going to be plenty expensive to creep feed with, and just getting them broke to feed. But I still think that's the best way to do it versus creep feeding them on something else. You know,
do you remember the first time we had litters and you didn't want to creep feed?
Yeah, a lot of the times I still don't want to. But
It stressed me smooth out.
But I'll tell you, it makes you feel good though when you walk down through there and you've got, you know, expensive pre-starter on the mat or in a feeder there, and they're up in the sow feeder eating what she didn't eat from that morning. I like that. So, yeah. With that, any other thoughts? Anything else we forgot?
As far as milk products, there's several different ones. If you're going to supplement, we like to clean the milkers out daily. You could put a picture of those little stainless steel feeders on there that we use in milkers. I like those a lot. We've used every kind of contraption there is to feed or milk in, and I like those stainless ones the best. Be sure we will. Sometimes it depends on how many you're milking, how many pigs you're milking, and how much they drink. But we kind of start them off slow and you know, kind of dunk their head in there to get them started. And then sometimes we'll we'll refill it once a day, sometimes twice, but just be sure you get those
that was the other
stainless
thing I
steel
was gonna
feeders
say. A lot of
clean.
times we'll go through there twice a day so you keep that milk fresh.
Yeah.
Because it'll, sour over and kind of get crusty and where they don't want it. So you want to make it to where they can take it and try to, again, figure out the amounts that it's taken, and so you don't put too much and waste and not enough and that kind of deal. So
I'm sure there's a lot more that we forgot. There's a ton that goes into getting them here healthy and alive and all that. But
yeah, and we'll probably touch on it again at some point. But hopefully this was helpful. Thank you again for tuning in, joining us on this little venture. If we can pray for you at all, thank you to those that have reached out. It's a blessing to be able to do that. It's not something we take lightly. And just as it's a blessing to sit here and just talk to you about the pig deal and the things that the Lord's blessed us with, it's a joy to be able to pray for you, for those of you that have reached out, and anything that we can do for you from that standpoint, we would love to. So we hope y'all have enjoyed this episode and look forward to the next one. If you haven't liked, followed, all that, we would really appreciate it. It helps other people find the podcast. And if you can, share it, and let's see who else can find it helpful. So thank y'all, and we will see you next time.